Hi, welcome back to Through Nikki's Lens. I am Nikki with one more video for you today in my Express Entry series. Are you curious to know if you need an educational credential assessment for your Express Entry application? I am here to explain to you today about educational credential assessments if you need one and how these can contribute to your CRS, that's your comprehensive ranking scores in Express Entry. So what is an ECA? An ECA is an assessment, a report, or a document, whichever you choose to call it, just to verify if it is that your foreign education is comparable to that of Canadian education. It basically tells if your foreign education is valid or equivalent to Canadian standards. It ensures transparency and fairness in recognizing international qualifications for immigration and employment purposes in Canada. There are several types of ECAs. Immigration ECAs. Immigration ECAs are specifically for immigration purposes, generally required for the Federal Skilled Worker Program, and contributes to your assessment point. Other ECAs are for employment purposes. When you are creating your Express Entry profile, it is important for you to include your reference number. There are some regulated professions that require specific ECAs. These are for regulated occupations, for example, for doctors and engineers. Getting an ECA for this purpose is necessary, however, it may not be sufficient. In these instances, you need to obtain licenses from relevant provincial or territorial regulatory bodies. In essence, this process ensures that you meet Canadian standards for practice, which may include additional examinations or assessments. The point system and credential assessment. Under the Express Entry Comprehensive Ranking System, that's the CRS, points are awarded based on your level of education assessed by an Educational Credential Assessment, an ECA. Your points that you get for your ECA can significantly impact your eligibility and your ranking in the Express Entry pool. And this may influence your chances of getting an ITA, that's an invitation to apply for permanent residency through Express Entry. You may want to know which credentials you need to get assessed. In general, you need to have your credential assessed for your highest level of educational qualification. These are the ones that you would have completed. When you think about which is the highest degree or credential to be assessed, then you would have your master's degree assessed. If you want to get points for multiple credentials, then you must have each of these credentials assessed separately. And at least one of these credentials should be reported as being equivalent to Canadian degree or qualifications of at least 3 years in duration. There are several designated bodies approved by IRCC to have your credentials assessed for immigration purposes. Some of these organizations have been designated from as far back as 2013. Let me give you a list of these designated organizations. These are specific organizations and professional bodies approved by IRCC to do credential assessments. They include Comparative Education Service, that's the University of Toronto School of Continuing Studies, International Credential Assessment Service of Canada, World Education Services, which a lot of persons generally know as WES, and this is one of the most popular ones, International Qualifications Assessment Service, that's IQAS, International Credential Evaluation Service, British Columbia Institute of Technology, that's BCIT, professional bodies like the Canadian Architectural Certification Board, CACB, for architects, the Medical Council of Canada for doctors, and the Pharmacy Examining Board of Canada for pharmacists. When thinking about the validity of your ECA document, you have to keep certain things in mind. One, the ECA should be issued by a designated organization or professional body approved for immigration purposes. Two, it should be no more than 5 years old at the time that you submit your express entry profile and or apply for your permanent residency. You are the one that's responsible to ensure that your reference number is correct and that your profile is up to date with accurate information. So, what the IRCC officer will do is verify that the information that you input in the application is correct. Do not make any mistakes because this can be detrimental to your application. If you want to submit multiple credentials in your Express Entry profile, there are a few things that you need to do. So you need to start by completing the education history section with your highest degree. Use the save and add feature to enter the additional credentials that you need to add in. So as they mentioned, start with your master's and then you move to your bachelor's degree and your secondary degree. However, in a lot of instances, once you have a master's degree or a bachelor's degree, you don't need to have your secondary completion of your education assessed. So each credential must be entered separately to accurately reflect your educational background and maximize your points potential. There is a little gray area when it comes to how many points, that at least in my view and my understanding, when it comes to how much points you can get if you utilize multiple credentials. I generally tend not to go into that because I don't have full understanding of that area. So I normally tell people if you have more than one educational credentials, try to just get the highest one assessed. And especially if you're in Canada. This is important. If you have a Canadian education, you do not, and I will stress, you do not have to have your foreign credentials assessed. So, generally, all you need with your Canadian credential is to ensure that you have your designated learning institution number, that's the DLI, and input that information in. And especially if you have a master's, then automatically you wouldn't have to have your bachelor's degree, your foreign bachelor's degree or bachelor's credential assessed. One thing I want to just remind you that I always ensure that I put the links to the various websites, generally to Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada website, that's IRCC's website, in my description. I also ensure that my description has detailed enough information about whatever topic, whatever it is that I am discussing and making my video on, so that you can always check my description for further information and important links that pertain to the topic. So if it is express entry, I have the completeness check or completeness check link included in my description. This is one of the most important links that you can check to ensure that whatever you're including in your express entry application is actually done correct and you do not leave anything out. You follow IRCC standards. This is the resource that the IRCC officers generally check and make reference to ensure that you do everything, that your permanent residency application is complete. If for any reason you think that you might not have all the details that you need to include in your express entry application, any documents, including for your employment, police certification, or whatever it is, go to the IRCC completeness link, that web page, and I also have that link in my description. I feel it's necessary to give you a little bit of context in relation to the CRS points that persons can get for their education and the educational credential assessment, or even the highest level of education that they have. In my situation, and I had to go back to my express entry profile and look at the information. So as some of you might already know, I created an express entry profile and was pursuing provincial nomination. However, I ended up withdrawing my applications because we got PR using my husband as the principal applicant. So I made notes in my express entry profile for the criteria that's human capital. My level of education, I got 126 points. I have a master's degree as my highest level of qualification. And I also, years ago, I believe maybe 2018, 2019, I did an ECA through WES, that's World Education Services. And at the time that I was pursuing PR through Express Entry, my ECA was still valid because, as I mentioned before, an ECA is valid for 5 years usually. So, in that Express Entry profile for my spouse, he got 8 points for his highest level of education, which is a bachelor's degree. To move to his profile, and I just mentioned that his highest education is a bachelor's degree. So, for the criteria under human capital, level of education, he got 112 points for that bachelor's degree. That's in the profile. And for me, as the spouse in his application, for my highest level of education, which is the master's degree, I got 10 points. What you need to note is that, and I will do my best to put a table or a breakdown of how much points that persons can get, that CRS points that persons can get for education. So usually when you have a spouse, your points will, or the highest points that you can get for your qualifications, they're less than if you applied as a single applicant. So some of your points would go to the points, the highest points that your spouse can get. What I want to caution persons is, if you do have a spouse, not because you can get more points if you apply as a single applicant for PR through express entry, that doesn't mean that you should take the opportunity to leave your spouse off of the application and then want to in the future sponsor them. That will be challenging for you to prove your case. IRCC will question you, why didn't you include your spouse in that application for PR? And your simple reason would be because you wanted to get more points. Because, as I explained earlier, once you have your spouse in your application, some of your points would go to your spouse. So I'll find the table and indicate, say you have a master's degree, how much you would get for that master's degree as a single applicant, as opposed to how much you would get for that master's degree if you're applying, submitting your PR application with a spouse. Do your best to do research to understand the various options that you have, the different scenarios in relation to if you choose to do an ECA or not, and the importance of having an educational credential assessment done. I want to thank you for making it this far in the video. If you have not yet subscribed to my channel, remember to subscribe. Hit the post notification bell so that when I post a new video, you are one of the first to be notified. Like the video, share it with someone else. Thank you so much for making it through Nikki's Lens, and I'll see you in my next video.